All right, we speak now to Strategic Studies Expert Petro Burkovskiy. He is a senior fellow at the Kyiv-based Democratic Initiatives Foundation, and we're asking him to share his views about what is going on there. So, Petro, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. You've heard what the United States is saying. Britain has acted in the same way, the European Union, NATO. So, do we know whether or not an assault is indeed imminent, and if so, when? Is it something that will come as a surprise, as the United States says?
The problem is that here in Ukraine for the last 8 years, since Russia started its invasion in 2014 and seized, we watched closely how Russian army has been training on its own territory, and we do understand that they were preparing all of these 8 years. They were learning lessons of their mistakes in 2014 when we failed to subdue our country, and we saw preparations and we saw military drills on the scenario of defeating Ukrainian army and taking the Ukrainian territories. So therefore, right now, when troops are on our borders, the composition of troops, not the size, but the composition of troops, tells us that they can do an assault and will try to defeat the Ukrainian army in the east of the country. So yes, we are preparing for the Russian invasion, and but at the same time, we do not make any crisis of this. So we get used actually to this kind of intentions in the East and to the kind of Russian intentions toward us. So we are just preparing the national defense of the country.
It's interesting that you should say that, because there have been reports saying that the Ukraine's foreign ministry has said that the U.S. embassy's move, recalling its staff and telling citizens to flee, is premature and is a manifestation of excessive caution. What do you make of that statement? And would you say it is in line with what some are claiming that Russia has?
I think. Okay, yes, excuse me. I think that the action of the American government is dictated by the recent debacle in Afghanistan, when the diplomats had to leave the country in the last minute. So right now, the Russian army is not the Afghanistan insurgency, of course. They have modern, sophisticated weapons, and I think the precaution that the American government is making right now is dictated by the obligations before the American voters. They just don't want to risk the lives of their people, and it can be understood. But still, so far, we also think that since we are ready to defend our own country, and of course, we will defend the lives of all people, not only of the Ukrainians, but of other people who live in Ukraine, including foreigners, of course.
So what I want to understand is the consensus within the government of the Ukraine, what the Ukrainian foreign minister has said, that the U.S. move is premature.
I think that they are saying that it serves a bad signal to the international investors. And right now, what we can see that, yes, the national currency is depreciating, and that investors, seeing the risks of war, they start to withdraw their money from the country. They are selling Eurobonds, Ukrainian debts. And of course, such a move by the American government, then it takes back the citizens. Of course, that cannot impress investors, and it's a bad signal to the market. So I think why the ministry is said there that it make markets more nervous than it should be in reality.
Okay, so we know that the oil price has also been decreasing as a result of that. But the statement goes on to say, in fact, there has been no cardinal changes in the security situation recently. The threat of new waves of Russian aggression has remained constant since 2014, and a buildup of Russian troops near the state border began in April next year. So how important is this statement just from the realm of how the world sees what is happening in the Ukraine at the moment? Some people are saying, well, there's precedence. Look what happened with the Crimea. We should be nervous about Russia. But what is the actual situation?
The actual situation is that not only Russian troops have been training for the last 8 years, but also the Ukrainian troops. And right now we're also receiving military cargoes from our allies, including the United States, the United Kingdom and Canada, and other Baltic countries, countries on the seashore of the Baltic Sea, also former Soviet republics and former Russian colonies. So we see that the ranks behind us have been consolidated, that the Europeans have been consolidated. And moreover, one of the optimistic sign is that just today, just a few hours ago, there was a news that there was a principal agreement that there will be a meeting between 4 political advisors of President of Ukraine, of Russia, the German Chancellor and President of France. So they will meet in Paris to discuss the possible peace resolution. So this is a good a sign of optimism, because if during this meeting they will achieve an agreement about the ceasefire, that would be a clear signal of de-escalation. So let's hope that it's a modest optimism, but still we have not all bad news today, but we'll also have one good news.
I mean, it's very interesting that you mentioned those countries. We know that Germany have been seen as somewhat sympathizers, including with France's Prime Minister, François Fillon, and the former Austrian Foreign Minister, Karin Knessel, who have been said to not be as anti-Russia as other European countries. But we know that on the table is the demand around NATO, the Ukraine joining NATO. Russia is completely against that. What are people in the Ukraine saying? Because Russia has been very firm in saying that not all Ukrainians agree, that those in the East actually do support Russia and its stance.
Yes, it's a very good question of you, and just to understand for you and for the audience, before the war in 2012, the support for NATO membership, we conducted a constant opinion polls. So in 2012, the support for NATO membership was only about 12% of the total population. But when Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014, in September 2014, the support for NATO membership increased up to 44%. Right now, after the new threats, in 2 months, right now this year, in December, last year in December, so a month ago, we conducted a poll, and the support for NATO membership increased to 53%, the highest figure in the Ukrainian history. So the truth is that every time then Russia tried to intimidate Ukraine or to coerce it by the military actions, the desire to join NATO grows. But when, for instance, when President Zelensky came in 2019 and promised that he will try to make a peace agreement with Putin and with Russia, the support for NATO fell to 40%, to almost 39, 38%. So, but when again the Russian forces started to fight with the Ukrainian forces, it again started to grow. The main explanation is that Ukrainians are not looking for NATO membership. They're just looking for the alternative source of security. Mm-hmm. So before the war, Russia was a possible alternative. The security and defense alliance with Russia was an alternative for the country. But after Russia invaded in South, Ukrainians starts to look in other way. So the more Putin make aggressive steps against Ukraine, the more popularity of NATO membership grows. So his actions are counterproductive, actually.
Petro, just tell me, how real are the threats? I mean, you've just been telling me that everybody is getting ready, but those who say, you know, it's just posturing by President Putin really to use the Ukraine as leverage to get the West to lift the sanctions against it. And this happens as the European Union threatens sanctions never seen before. That's how it describes it. So if it's a game of chess, which way would President Putin move right now?
Well, it's very hard to say, I will tell you frankly. Well, I think one of the clues that can explain his behavior is that the companies under his control, the biggest Russian companies, Gazprom, which sells natural gas to Europe and to China, Rosneft, which sells oil, crude oil to Europe and to China and elsewhere in Asia. So right now they are making huge profits due to the high prices for oil and natural gas. And in case of invasion, the financial sanctions would just cut off Russian banking system from the international banking system, and that will cut off Russian companies from channels to get money from the West for the oil and gas. And that would cut Russian companies off the investments into the inventories, into the new drills. So it will hit hard the purse of Mr. Putin. So I hope that if he is greedy enough, then he will recalculate the whole thing. But just to mention you that I don't think that Putin can use Ukraine to threaten Europe. These are two separate issues, meaning the issue of control over Ukraine and control over Europe.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us.